If you want to be excellent in life, you have to do what everyone is not doing. And I'm not saying this in a cocky, ego, prideful type of way. I'm saying this in a way of understanding that we live in a world that wants you broke, busted, and disgusted. We live in a world that has fully taken over most people's minds, their character, their morals, or standards. And most people are not living by any type of code. And the code that they are living by is a social media code. And that's not the code that we should be living off of. That's not how we should be basing our decisions, basing our mindsets, our morals. And so we're going to talk about what that looks like when it comes to being excellent and doing the things that people are not doing. And I'm not talking about career. I'm not talking about how you decide to build your life. I'm talking about your morals and your character and how you operate, how you treat people, how you talk to people, things of that nature. This is something that I have been working on for a while, especially since I have been in a leadership position for over 6 months now. It's almost coming up on a year of me starting this new journey and understanding what it means to be a leader of your life. So I have just really engulfed myself in self-development. And although I've been working a lot at work, I'm learning so much about myself, about life, about how to treat people, about how to influence and inspire other people, especially this new generation of people coming into the world, going into the workforce, going into college, things of that nature. So this thing about being excellent is something that I have always pretty much lived by without really recognizing that that's what I was doing. I am realizing that God made me a certain way, and it's something that I can't run from anymore. I can't fight it anymore. It's who I am, and I'm just so happy that I've just come to terms with that, because now I can really talk about it and really express it and allow other people to kind of learn more about me and also learn more about how I operate and why I operate the way that I do. So how I'm going to do this video, I have 3 pieces of scripture that I'm going to read and talk about regarding this topic. So we're just going to get right into it. So when I think about being excellent, I think about living in the image of God. And the thing about it, I know a lot of people aren't religious, a lot of people are not Christians, and I want you guys to kind of take religion out of it and think about this from a spiritual perspective when it comes to your soul, your heart posture, how you treat people, how you talk to people. I want you to think about it from that perspective. And so when I talk about living in the image of God, I'm talking about being godly, having that godly energy, being peaceful, being calm, being gentle, thinking before speaking, thinking before acting, being more intentional, being more graceful and forgiving. That's what I think about when I think about being more godly or being close to godliness. Being clean, having a clean space, clean hygiene, being intentional about how you present yourself to the world, how you interact with people in the world. That's what I think about. So first we're going to read 2 Peter chapter 1 verses 5 through 7. In view of all this, make every effort to respond to God's promises. Supplement your faith with the generous provision of moral excellence, and moral excellence with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, and self-control with patient endurance, and patient endurance with godliness, and godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love for everyone. So when I think about being excellent, doing what everyone is not right now with where the world is having self-control. So for me, that's something that I'm focused on. I'm focused on building my discipline to the next level. You all know that I go to the gym consistently, I cook a lot, but I have found myself not having as much self-control when it comes to what I'm consuming, when it comes to nutrition. So I'm eating more sugar, I am eating more fried foods, which previously I wasn't, but with my workspace, it has caused me to want to eat more of what I should not be eating. And I have lost a lot of self-control in that area. And so that's something that I'm really working on. And as you guys hear, this is a part of who God wants us to be. He wants us to have self-control. He wants us to be able to endure those hard times in life, because we're going to have hard times. Even if you're the most excellent, the most godly person, you are going to deal with hardships in life, whether that's dealing with death, relationships, job loss, changing careers, anything that can happen, health issues. You're going to experience hard times. But being excellent is being able to understand that and being able to endure those hard times. Not saying you're never going to cry, you're never going to want to go to therapy, never want to write about it. It's just understanding that it's a part of life and not getting into a point where you just can't take it anymore. Maybe you want to, take your own life. Maybe you just sulk and just live in that depression for long periods of time. You endure it and you see everything from a different perspective of, what can I learn from this? How can I heal through this? How can I still have this problem but still operate in life where I'm treating people right? I'm having a positive attitude when necessary, things of that nature. You're being kind to other people. And this is a huge one for me because, I'm healing and I'm working through some things. But sometimes people will trigger you and get you to a point where you get out of character. So one quote that I've been taking with me to work recently this week is, when they go low, you go high. And I'll give you guys a perfect example. So you guys know that I work in the food industry. I'm a director or assistant director right now. And so I'm responsible for leading teams through shifts and also just being a part of making sure that the business is flowing, we're growing, things of that nature. So I deal with a lot of customer service, customer complaints, problem solving, things like that. And so there was an issue where a guest was missing 2 sandwiches. And mind you, I caught the issue right when it happened. Like, I noticed after the fact, like, dang, we forgot these 2 sandwiches, right? Knew the person was probably going to call. The lady called, and I'm sorry, but she was a Karen. She called and was like, we forgot her sandwiches. And I was like, okay, I'm so sorry about that. Like, you can come back and we'll replace those for you, or we can add them to your app if you want to come back and get them another day. And she's like, well, we were having that food for dinner, so it doesn't help me if you put it on my app. And I was like, okay, well, you're welcome to come back today. Once again, I am sorry about that. And she goes, yeah, I'm going to come back for them for my sandwiches, but I also better be compensated with something else since I have to come back. And that triggered me. Immediately my thought was to go off on her and like ask her, like, is this how you talk to people? Like, this is not okay. But you know what I said? After she said that, I took a moment, I took a breather, I didn't say anything, and I said, okay. It wasn't a long breather, maybe like 5 to 10 seconds. That's a long time when you're on the phone, because usually on the phone you're going back and forth. So I paused and I said, okay. And then she paused and was like, yeah, okay. And like, you can tell that she was provoking me. She wanted me to like get smart with her. She wanted a reaction out of me, but I didn't give her that. I didn't give her the satisfaction, because that week is when I started to tell myself, when they go low, you go high. And that is being excellent. And as hard as that is, especially for me, it is what sets you apart from other people. It is what helps you get through problem solving a lot faster, a lot easier. It allows you to have better relationships. It allows you to have a better quality of life. You don't go low when other people don't go low. And that's why they say you don't fight fire with fire. Like I said, it's a very hard thing to do, but it is a part of having self-control, a part of being able to be patient, being able to endure those tough conversations, those tough situations, especially for someone like me who works in the people business. I'm dealing with people every single day. I am problem solving every single day. And it is a hard thing to do, but that's why I said over this past year, I have learned so much about myself, about life, about how to treat people, how to have these hard conversations, about how to endure when people are talking to you crazy, cursing you out, things of that nature. Like I said, it's not about them. It's about you and your relationship with yourself and what you stand on and what you do to protect your own peace. So I also want to mention, like, it's important to have high standards for yourself and having morals. That's what this is about. It said, supplement your faith with a generous provision of moral excellence with knowledge. Being someone who is always willing to learn, being willing to grow, being able to change the way you think about things for the better purpose of yourself and those around you. Having a secure foundation for yourself when it comes to how you operate. Like I said, when they go low, you go high. Not fighting fire with fire. Being someone who is more willing to listen to understand instead of listening to respond. Being someone who has values when it comes to how they spend their money, how they spend their time, being able to say no, not people pleasing. These are all things that push you to being, someone with excellent behavior and just having morals and having high standards so that you can live a better quality of life and moving closer to that godly energy. So like I said, this was in 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 5 through 7. I'll also have this in the description box, but you want to live in that image of God, and it takes a lot of time to get there. It takes a lot of intentionality and healing and not allowing the world and other people to control you and what you have going on internally. And so that's why I wanted to talk about this, because it's a really hard thing to do. But once you learn it and you kind of master it and you just take it with you day by day, you'll get better at it, and it will get easier, and you will become an overall better person and moving closer to being that excellent person that you seek to be, that highest version of yourself. The next one is a bit of a long text. It's Colossians, I believe it's pronounced. Chapter 3, and it's verses 5 through 15. I'm going to read all of these, and then I'll give you my little 2 cents on it. So put to death the sinful earthly things lurking within you. Have nothing to do with sexual immorality, impurity, lust, and evil desires. Don't be greedy, for a greedy person is an adulterer, worshiping the things of this world. Because of these sins, the anger of God is coming. You used to do these things when your life was still part of this world. But now is the time to get rid of anger, rage, malicious behavior, slander, and dirty language. Don't lie to each other, for you have stripped off your old sinful nature and all its wicked deeds. Put on your new nature and be renewed as you learn to know your Creator and become like Him. In this new life, it doesn't matter if you are a Jew or a Gentile, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbaric, uncivilized, slave or free. Christ is all that matters, and He lives in all of us. Since God chose you to be the holy people He loves, you must clothe yourselves with tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds us all together in perfect harmony. And let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your hearts. For as members of one body, you are called to live in peace and always be thankful. If we all lived in a world where everybody was just so loving and not greedy and not lustful, the world would be a better place. We wouldn't have RAPE. We wouldn't have trafficking. We wouldn't have so much capitalism. Everything wouldn't cost so much money. That's in a perfect world, right? But that's not the world we live in. So you have to be that person who chooses to do the right thing, who chooses to be a good person, who chooses not to be greedy, not to lie, not to get over on people, not to use people, not to be a manipulator or a narcissist. You have to choose to be that person. And I like to say to just seek to be a good person who has empathy, is humble, and is a gentle person. For me, that's something that I am working on. It's being more gentle, being more of a listener, being more kind, and just being more intentional with how I respond to things and having more empathy. When I got my degree in social work, I learned a lot about empathy and understanding people and where they come from and their backgrounds and their genetics and how that all plays a role in how people show up in the world. And I do a great job of that. I don't just take things for what it is. I think beyond, the person and what they may have experienced, what they may be going through. And it helps me to be more empathetic, more kind, and more gentle. But we all must have that level of understanding. I think it mentioned something about, let's see. Make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. There's a reason why we are called to forgive other people. You don't want to hold on to that anger. I'm not saying you got to be friends with them. You have to put yourself around them. But forgiving them is just letting go of that rage, of the anger that you have towards that person, of the hurt that you have towards that person. And it's not about them. It's about freeing you from those feelings, freeing you from having that anger and those negative chemicals and emotions inside of you. Because when you have those feelings inside of you, you show up as that person who's bitter, who's angry, and you may be using those feelings that you have towards that person towards other people when you go through drive-through, when you go to the bank, when you go to the grocery store. You're not knowing why you're always so agitated, always so irritated. You think it's just because of what that person did, but really you're still holding on from anger that you have towards another person that has just came up to surface with how you operate on a daily basis. So forgiving others and just being a good person is not about letting people walk all over you. It's about your equilibrium and your state of just mental health and just being at peace with yourself and with life, and not just being so easy to be agitated, irritated, anger. Like I said, to get rid of anger and rage and malicious behavior, slander, and dirty language. I've mentioned before, I have a family member who's in this very toxic relationship, and she reminds me so much of the importance of not being a person who is malicious, who even deals with people who are malicious, who deals with people who, are just full of all these impurities such as, lust and the gambling and things of that nature. Not to say that they are a bad person, but just what happens when you deal with those type of people and what that does to you. You may not be such a, malicious or angry person, but you're dealing with someone who is, and is causing you to behave a certain way. And that's why it's so important that if you are someone who is wanting to be excellent, that you understand that you are choosing to do something that 90% of the world is choosing not to be. And so you are going to be, ridiculed. You're going to be in tough situations where you're having to say the hard things and do the hard things and protect your peace at all costs, but it's for the greater good of the world. For me, I don't allow myself to do a lot of things, and it's not because I think I'm better. It's just because I understand the repercussions that things have. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't go to the club. I don't put myself in certain environments because I understand the consequences that come from it. Not because, like I said, it makes me better, it makes me holier than thou. It has nothing to do with that, which is why I mentioned earlier, this is not about religion and saying if I'm a sinner or not. It's just about the consequences that you feel on the inside when you deal with these type of things. And that's just not something that I want to deal with. I don't want that to be a part of my foundation of my morals, of my character, of my values. And so when it comes to, dealing with desires and, your reactions to things, it's important that you seek to understand and find out if these things are harmful to you and understand why they are harmful. Don't just think about it from, oh, this makes me a sinner, because that's not enough for most people to let go of certain things. I want you guys to think about how these things really affect you mentally, how they affect your bank account, how they affect your relationships, how they affect how you see the world and how you treat people. That is what really matters when it comes to this whole idea of these, this sinful nature or these desires that are harmful to you. Don't think about it from a religious standpoint of doing or not doing. Just think about what it's doing to your spirit, what it's doing to your mind, what it's doing to your health. And that will help you to understand why these things don't lead to excellence and why these things usually end in hurt and pain and sorrow and grieving and, being broke, busted, and disgusted. And so I always like to say, seek to be a good person, be humble, be understanding, be more kind, and let go of those feelings and those grudges that aren't helping you, that are only harming you and keeping you in this negative mindset, in this negative spiral, and in this negative cycle. And lastly, the verse comes from Philippians 4:8. This is one of my favorite verses and also one of my favorite books. And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. One of the best things you can do is not allowing this world to control the way you think. And that's really hard because we have social media and everyone around us is so caught up in this world, which is why I loved in the last verse, it said, let's see. It says something that I meant to hit on. It says, you used to do these things when your life was still a part of this world. Another verse that I like, I believe it's Romans 12:2. It says, Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So in this verse in Philippians 4:8, where it talks about fixing your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right, it's about thinking more positively. Like, yes, there's so much bad things going on around in the world. There's stuff with the government and the president and wars and all these things. But those are things that are out of your control. What you can control is what's going on here and what's going on in your heart. So you want to focus on things that are good, moving towards your goals, moving towards being blessed so that you can be a blessing to other people, asking God for wisdom, asking God for discernment with your decision making and with the people in your life. Thinking about things that are going to help you become better versus, complaining and worrying and being ungrateful and just worrying about things that probably will never happen, or things that were in the past that happened that you can no longer change or no longer control. Like I said, this world will have you broke, busted, and disgusted. And that's one of my favorite things to say because that's a real thing. It will, you may be wanting to work on your financial goals, but you're too busy worried about the debt that you're in, or, those bad money moves that you made in the past versus focusing on what is good. How much do you have now? Are you able to pay your bills without stressing out? Or are you just able to pay all your bills? You may not have any money left over, but you still are able to pay your bills. Do you have a few $100s in your savings account? Do you have the ability to save $5 or $10 every paycheck? Like, focus on things that will actually get you somewhere versus things that won't get you anywhere, that will keep you stuck. So I love this verse because when it comes to being excellent, you don't want to have a pessimistic mindset. You don't want to be so focused on the past, focused on gossiping, focused on, having a bad attitude or seeing everything from a negative perspective. People who make everything about religion or everything about politics or everything about racism. You don't want to be that type of person. Yes, those things are real. Yes, those things can be true in certain aspects or for certain people, but you don't have to live a life where you're always seeing things from such a negative perspective. And so being excellent overall, guys, it's about being a great person. It's about doing the things that people are not doing. Even when we talk about action, being excellent is going to work on time, not calling out of work because you don't feel like going to work, eating those healthier food choices, going to the gym, reading the books, putting the TV down, putting the phone down, or turning the TV off and putting the phone down, limiting your screen time, spending more time with your loved ones, not going to the club, not drinking the alcohol, not, taking the substances. It's all about doing the things that the world is not encouraging. Signing up for 1,000 credit cards, or not literally 1,000, but signing up for all those credit cards, signing up for all these payment plans. Whatever is on the TV, I'm not following. All these medications that they're advertising and things of that nature. You don't want to do what everybody else is doing. Getting the BBLs, caring so much about the outer appearance, but not focusing on what's going on the inside. Not spending your money on all this stuff that really, 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 really don't matter. I started my debt-free journey in March. I've already made so much progress because I'm doing what people are not doing. I'm not trying to spend every dollar to go on a trip, or every dollar to buy the newest shoe that just came out, or buying the newest phone that just came out just because. Do what everyone is not doing. Seek to be a good person. Seek to have some standards, some values, some morals, some high standards for your life, how you want to operate, what type of man or woman you want to date or marry, how you want to raise your kids, what your education looks like, how often you're learning. These are the things that will actually get you somewhere in life, that will actually please God, that will actually allow you to reach your goals and to live a life that you are destined to live, that you were promised to live, that you promised yourself that you were going to live. That is what will get you somewhere, not the opposite, not doing what the world says. So I hope you guys can take something from this video as we're all on this journey to become leaders of ourselves, as we're all on this journey to become excellent. Find some strong foundation in what your morals are, what your standards are, how you want to be a leader for yourself and for other people, and watch your life change for the better. Let me know what you think about this video in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next one.